Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 146.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I am your host, Jay Massey, and guess what, guys? Today, we are going to talk about one of my most favorite subjects on the planet, which, if you make it past this far, I'm going to say that this next word that I'm going to say, if you make it past this next word, I think you're going to enjoy it too, because we're going to be talking about sales. Oh, no. He said the S word. Yes, I did. I know for some of you, you're on this path to grow your cash flow. You're trying to figure it out, and you are probably just as introverted as I am, which you're like, how on earth can I ever get my product, my business, my real estate off the ground? Well, today's guest is going to help you do that because many of you know that sales is where it's at. Mark Jamnik is today's guest, and he's been out there helping individuals as a sales coach for a decade. That's 10 years. And the cool thing is that he loves to do it, hear me clearly, with business owners of small to medium-sized businesses, entrepreneurs, company founders, sales teams. We're talking you and I because one of the most difficult things to do is to build a cohesive sales team when you don't have a person like a sales manager or those types of things. If you've got that small team or you're like, man, I'm a one-man band and I would love at least one other person to help me go sell this stuff, I think you're going to enjoy what he has to say. Mark, you there?
I am. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And just a point of clarification, I began my company 4 years ago as a sales coach. I've been in sales well over a decade. So I just wanted to make sure that I was clear. And because I heard that, I'm like, I just want to make sure that I'm being as completely transparent as I possibly can be.
Got it. Yes.
Okay.
Well, hey, experienced or not, the point is that you are willing to be brave. Now, many of the people listening know the first question that I am about to ask you. Before you were brave enough to go out there and help other people, I look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, Batman, Robin, Lone Ranger, I guess you could say was one too. And all of those individuals went around saving lives and helping people with their mess. Okay, that's what they did. They made the lives of the persons that they had contact with better by using their skills and talents and abilities, or even their pain in some cases, to the advantage. However, before they were putting on their capes and tights and all that other stuff, they were just normal people in some other way. They had an origin story. Something happened to them. They came from somewhere, something happened, and then they became the superhero. What I would love to know is before you started your company 4 years ago, before you were doing all of these things, saving small business owners from themselves in a lot of cases, what is it? Who is Mark Jamnik?
Wow, that is such a fantastic question. And the first time I heard you ask that on the show, I was just been thinking about how do I answer that question? Like, where do you even begin? But thank you again. Thanks for having me on the show. And I'm excited to share that journey. And so I would say, this journey to be an entrepreneur is something that was embedded in me from a very, very early age. And it was just one of those things that as I was growing up, my dad always said, boy, you have a very expensive taste, so you're going to need to make a lot of money. Right. And so I took that to heart and just really, I was always looking for an opportunity. And so before I really began this company 4 years ago, we'll even go back to junior high. I saw a friend of mine started up a candy business. He was basically selling candy between classes. And I said, you know what? He was running out of stock. He was running out of inventory. So I said, hey, there's demand, so there's an opportunity here. So I bought my first kind of couple boxes of candy and sold out. Then I needed to buy a bigger book bag. And so day after day, week after week, the business started growing until I eventually got in trouble for selling candy. So, they were thinking it was something else. It was nothing other than just simply candy. But I did have to stop that. And then I shifted over into being a paper boy. And that then transferred over into being I started up a lawn care business. And that carried me through college. And it was one of those times that in college, I was sitting there, I was going into my senior year, and I was preparing the list of clients that my team had to go out and see. Actually, it was a gentleman that was also helping me. And basically, I was going away to school, and there was someone that was going to be cutting the grass that I had been cutting over all of these years. And I was going to be making money while I was at school. And I thought, this is amazing. This is so cool. That was like the first time that I really had an opportunity to see entrepreneurship and for what it really is and what it is that you really talk about, which is really that lifestyle and that the way of being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And so that really got me interested in the entrepreneurial aspect. And then at that point, then I shifted over into, I graduated college, and then I started in the world of sales. And it was one of those experiences where I remember going into my boss's office on one of those days, and I said, man, I made 100 phone calls. I didn't get a hold of anybody today. And, I left messages, but didn't get one appointment. And I just remember being so kind of disappointed, but also knowing that this is all part of the game. And that next day, I got a couple calls back, and just that was all kind of part of that experience of this is really sales, and this is really what it takes in order to understand what it really is to be in sales, and to know that there's a lot of no's to get to those yeses, but also it's about learning a lot about yourself. And so over those next 10 years, I spent and crafted and refined really what that sales element was. And the gentleman that I was listening to the other day, and I mean, I know that this is really focused in on real estate, and we all know what happened in 2008. Right. There was just a little air quotes blip in the market. It was a little minor downturn. Sure. And I know I'm in Arizona, and we're still recovering from that. It's coming back, but it's still in that process. Yeah. But in that whole process, I got scared about selling again. And there was a certain aspect of, I told myself a story in a meeting when some managers called me in and said, Mark, you're at 60% of budget. What's going on? And I had a bunch of stories. The economy's down. This isn't happening. That client pulled out. This client pulled out. And they were all doing it. And I have the utmost respect for all of them at this point. I didn't at the time. Clearly, because it's like, they were questioning why I was doing what I was doing or what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I said, I'm not doing my job. And so I'm going to make myself look like a superhero, and I'm going to start up a company, or I'm going to go figure out what I can really do on an entrepreneurial side to make myself look good so I don't have to worry about this whole thing of selling. Is that awesome or what? Like, talk about a great story. Like, I've made myself a story where I could start up a company where I didn't have to sell. And I was running from the best part of myself.
That's awesome.
And so I realized how, and I mean, I came to that realization. I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought I could actually build a company around not having to sell. And so with that whole thing, with this whole journey and this whole process of really identifying with that, I started, a few years ago on the whole life coaching and just, well, hey, I can help someone find their passion. But wait a second, I need to help them sell. I need to help them. I need to sell myself in order to do that. And this whole process was really my own discovery of the fact that selling is really a bad word in a lot of people's minds. Yep. But it's ultimately the best thing that our society has done when done appropriately. And I like the term, a few years ago I heard, serve, don't sell. Right. And I think if people would just simply replace that in their own mind, in their own context of what sales really is, it's really about serving someone else in a way that's really going to benefit them. Yeah. And so when I started to embrace that, I started to find my connection back to selling and serving people. And from that, then I started working with teams, as you mentioned, as you alluded to in the introduction. And it was one of those things where I had an opportunity to take my over a decade of sales experience and start applying it to other teams so that they could then go out there and embrace the whole world of sales and not look at it as a bad word, but look at it as a way of how they can serve their clients the best way.
You know, I was just thinking about something. When movies come out, they have these ratings and R or PG-13 or G. And if sales is a bad word, this particular episode is probably about to be rated R already. Because
Absolutely.
we are that far. We've barely begun, and we just keep saying it over and over
Sales,
and over
sales,
again.
sales.
They're like, oh my God, no, make it stop. Now, I like there's a lot of what you said because first of all, I commend you on recognizing at least you did something that I hear all the time. People say, Jay, I don't want to sell. I just want to do real estate. And I'm trying. I try to hold back the chuckle like, okay, you can do real estate. I don't know how you're going to do it without selling something, but hey, it's part of the process in order to get anything done. Nothing happens until there's a sale. And I get so amped about figuring out how to do it. And when it's done right, properly, like you said, I think it's great. But I want to know what you meant by running from the best part of yourself. Because I'm guessing that there's a number of people right now who are doing something similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. And it's one of those things that when you embrace a gift that you have and you're, I'm going to use the word rewarded because of the fact that when you do something really well, you're rewarded. And whether that be compliments, whether that be in money, whatever it is that you see a reward. And ultimately, it was something that for years I was rewarded for. And I then started to look for something else because I saw in that moment that there was something wrong. And I thought there was something wrong with me. And so I started going on this whole journey of personal discovery. It's like, well, I'm going to go read these books. I'm going to go to these events, which are all fantastic. And I stand by and I continue to go through because, they say that the top earners are learners. Right. So I love learning things. But what I was trying to learn was how to be a better me. And the best way that I could be me was to just simply be me. Mm-hmm. And not try to be someone else. And I think for a long part of this journey, which life is all about, was really me doing that. And it was me running from, like I had mentioned, the best part of myself. So it was really not embracing something that I was looking at incorrectly. It was almost like I was looking in a mirror, and the mirror was reflecting some of the things that I maybe didn't want to see, but needed to see. And so I'm like, well, if I just don't look at the mirror, then I don't need to look at that. Right? But it's the ostrich problem, I guess. Yes. Stick your head in the sand and see if the problem goes away.
Right. It's not really there. I didn't see it. It's because you're not looking in the mirror. Got it. Totally understood. And I can mimic similar feelings because it's been a process learning to sell anything. And I too, I believe that sales equals service. I can't, and unless you allow me to sell you something, I can't serve you. I want to serve you. Mm-hmm. But if we don't do that, if you prevent me from selling you something, I can't serve you. And then we end up in an abusive relationship and I get taken advantage of. It's like, come on, we have to have a fair and equal exchange of value for value. And this is just one way of, making that value known. I tend to call that compensation we receive certificates of appreciation. That's what they are. I appreciate what you've created so much. It's a certificate of appreciation. Now, you said something that I know makes most people quit, but you didn't, and I got to understand why. Why were you different? You said you made 100 calls. It didn't really go so well. Okay, let me rephrase. Not only did it not go well, you probably were feeling worse, especially by call, 12. It doesn't take that long. You're like, oh my God. You didn't run the other way. Why not?
Because I know that any type of opportunity, any type of on the other side of victory, is really that piece of having to go through obstacles and challenges. And ever since I was a very, very little kid, I was always fascinated by quotes. I mean, I'm talking when I was like a teenager, some of the things that I had up on my walls, I mean, along with some cars and whatnot, were quotes. I loved quotes. And all of those things always mimicked something about going through obstacles and facing obstacles in your life and life, just all of the things to help motivate and inspire. So I knew that this was just all part of it. I didn't agree with it. I didn't agree that it needed to be that difficult. But I realized that what's my alternative? Quitting? And that just didn't seem appropriate for me either, because I'm like, there's something about this. There's something about being able to offer up a product that I truly believed in. I mean, I really believed in the program that I did. And I think that's step one, obviously, is that sale needs to happen for you first. Yeah. Then the rest of the sales happen. But I truly believed, at the time I was in advertising sales. And so I was representing over 80 different cable networks. And so if I met with a company and they were trying to sell to the younger audience, I had MTV in my back pocket. Hey, I have MTV, I have VH1. And so I could really articulate and really get clear on who they needed to reach and talk to. And so it was always fantastic because I had 80 different things that I could pull out at any given time and say, here, this is who you're trying to reach. Here's how I could help. This is what you are looking to do. This is how I can help. And so from that perspective, I really believed in what I was doing. And so to the other point of not only just my own personal self of just continuing to go through beyond the rejection, but it was also, this is really a service that I believed in.
Yeah. There's nothing that you can't replace that. You can't replace it, nor can you fake it. It has to be something that, I mean, and the thing is it's got to be something that you believe. I can't believe it for you. You have to be the one to believe it. And that transfer of energy is so important. Now, so, and when you speak of obstacles, because we all encounter them, when you got shut down by we'll call it the FTC at your school for having a business that was too large, I think that's a pattern. I find your business was doing so well, they had to shut you down. What is it, would you say, if you had to put your finger on it, what's that number one obstacle that you believe prevents more people from stepping into the greatness that they were born to be?
That is a great question. One thing that I would say, and your guest said this just the other day, it was another business coach, and it's clarity. It's not being clear enough on what it is that they want to do or what are those next steps that they need to take. And sometimes when you don't have clarity, you're not going to take that next step. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, you don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to see the next step. Right. And so I think sometimes people are waiting for the clouds to part, the clouds to rise, and everything is crystal clear. Right. But in reality, most of the time you're looking at one step in front of you. And initially, especially, right? I'm sure the first time that you started doing this, you're like, I have no clue what I'm doing in a podcast.
All you got to do is go listen to the first episode. It's right? Clear.
Yeah. But the fact is, you took it. And then you took another step. And, we're in 140, right? So, I mean, whatever number this will be. But that's just it. And it's taking that first step that's sometimes scary and really seeing how you feel after it. It's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Let me take another one. Oh, that wasn't so bad. Let me take another one. And so most people get stuck by analysis by paralysis.
Right.
Or paralysis by analysis.
Either one.
They're
stuck either way.
I was a little confused there.
It's fine. At the end of the day, I've always asked anyone that I'm working with to go as far as you can see. And when you get there, then you will see further. It's kind of like driving in thick fog. I grew up in Germany, and you want to talk about some thick fog at night. You are moving really, 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 really slow because you can't see more than a foot in front of you. You know the way home, I mean, but you've got to drive really, really slow because you have no time for reaction. It takes forever, but you get home by seeing just in front of you.
Yeah.
And that's an uncomfortable feeling at the end of the day. Very uncomfortable. So answer me this, Batman. You're doing sales and you're learning about yourself. At some point, something happens somewhere and says, you know what? I can help other people with this.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that moment, that moment where you were awakened and you were like, you know what? Let me go find a cape. I'm going to put on my mask and I'm going to go save some lives because what I have is useful, helpful, and people need to know about this.
Yeah, that's great. And I could tell you almost with detail where I was when I had this epiphany, because as I mentioned, in 2008, I started looking at this whole piece of, well, what else am I really supposed to do? And as I went through that whole process, I went to different events and hired a coach. And it was on my second coaching call with a Tony Robbins coach that I'm sitting there, and I pulled off to the side of the road. I was sitting outside of a Jamba Juice in Phoenix, and there's like a half wall in front of me. I'm sitting in my car, and I'm just kind of watching the cars go by, and we're talking about, because I was really trying to figure out, what is my purpose? Like, what do I really want to do here? Because I had no idea what the next step was for me. And, he was just like, well, tell me a little bit about what you like doing. And I said, well, what's interesting? I said, people will come up to me all the time at work and ask me, well, how would you do this? Or how to do this? Or, I was always like that guy that everyone came to and never really kind of saw myself in that way of, wait a second, I'm actually helping all of these people as they're coming on board or as they're asking questions about how to bring on this client or that client. And I said, well, I love doing that. And he said, well, did you know that that's coaching? and I said, well, I've been doing that for over a decade. And he's like, yeah, well, now you have an opportunity if that's, and I said, I love doing that. He's like, well, have you ever thought about coaching? And I said, not until just now. But in that moment, I just remember saying, like, that's really what I'd love to do, is be able to help people in this way with all the experience that I have. And I'm like, you could get paid to do that? I mean, it was almost like I had no idea. I mean, and even though I had just paid, I was basically going through coaching myself, but didn't put two and two together. So it was in that moment that I said, well, what do I need to do? And he started telling me, and the long and the short of it is I just started taking those steps that my coach instructed me to do. And lo and behold, a few months later, I was going through the classes and the process. And, about a year or so later, I started up my company, and so it was all in that process. But it was in that moment of question. And so he was really serving me at that point. He wasn't selling me on coaching. He just was serving me.
Right. So in that story, though, never once did I hear you mention, I wanted to find the thing that was going to earn or make the most money. I was looking for that. It sounds as though what was more important to you was the idea of something that you would enjoy.
Absolutely.
Yes. So for those, listening right now, what's more important? Trying to figure out what's where the money is, or what I should love and enjoy doing, in your opinion?
Yeah. Great question. And it's something I basically took Maslow's hierarchy with all the things that I've been studying. I'm a creative guy. Like I love art. Actually, I got back into painting and
wow. Cool.
I used to love doing that when I was little. So anyhow, I'm always kind of creating things, and that's the joy of being an entrepreneur and doing your own thing.
Yep.
And so I came up with this model, and I think that this will be really good for the listeners. And it's basically the 3 levels of business. But it's based off of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. And so you start out at the pinnacle, we'll start off with the base. The base of the triangle is profit. You ultimately need to look at profit. But right above profit is process. How do you do the things you need to do? And the pinnacle is purpose. Oh. Now, when you start off, all that you have is purpose. You don't have profit. You don't have any process. You just have an idea. And it's a why behind why you're doing what you're doing. So I go through this process, and 3 tools that I offer in one of my programs called the Sales Roadmap Training Program go through these 3 different levels. And so the purpose is really the first identifier of why do you do what you do? Mm-hmm. and really getting that clarity there. But that's where I started. I wasn't starting with the profit. I was starting with, why do I want to do this? And then slowly but surely, I started to say, well, this is something that I can create. I could take all of these things that I've done over these years and put it into a program. And that's one of the things that's part of that sales roadmap training program. I created a sales curriculum. And in that, there's these steps that you could take. But it was just me figuring out a way to be able to help serve more people. So then I plugged it into a process. And then ultimately from after that process happened, which is funny enough in and of itself, that one of the first things that I started when I began my company was I came up with this idea. And this was back in 2011. And I sold the idea without having the product completely done.
Don't tell them our super secrets. Yes.
And so I remember I had to wake up every morning to record this one thing because I'm like, I don't have this done. What am I going to say today?
Yeah.
And I came up with it. But out of that was the product that I'm now offering up. It's been vetted over the last few years, right? And so, but that process then ultimately led to profit.
Right.
So it starts, instead of going and starting with let me just make a lot of money. That's ultimately the return after you have an opportunity to work through from the top down.
Yeah, totally understood. That is such the way that it goes. It's one of the books out there, Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And I think that's it's pivotal. It's important. Don't let it be about the money at the beginning. And this is never more prevalent than true inside of the real estate space. It's people come and say, Jay, what's the fastest way I can make $3,000, $10,000, $20,000? And what deal is going to do it? Do I have to fix and flip or apartment buildings? And none of that matters until you understand why. And once you do, then you have the fuel to actually go make something happen. Because otherwise you're going to hit a roadblock. And maybe like you hit earlier, the FTC shuts you down for selling too much candy. Or, you get 100 phone calls. You're like, oh my God, I wrote all these offers. These things happen. So talk to us about that transition period, though. I mean, there's this period where you're used to earning money a certain way. You're kind of used to, we'll call it a stable paycheck that comes in, every 2 weeks on the 1st and the 15th or once a month, however it came. You're used to that happening. So how was your adjustment to that change?
Are you tired of letting good cash flow generating ideas go to waste? Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready to apply for a complimentary, yes, that means free, one-on-one breakthrough session. Take action now. Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready. Again, that's cashflowdiary.com/ready. Before we get back to today's episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, your host Jay Massey has some important insights to share with you.
Oh, yeah. We got something exciting. I don't know if you are going to catch this. I just want to make sure that you guys get it, that you're going to want to tune into cashflowdiary.tv. So at 10:15 p.m. Pacific time. Yes, I know for some of you in the U.S., that's going to be a little bit late. But for those of you overseas, you probably like it. 10:15 p.m. Pacific time, we're going to be recapping the show Shark Tank. So basically, right after the live show, so watch the episode, then log on to cashflowdiary.tv and let's chat. We're going to talk about the deals, why they worked, why they didn't work, what you would have done, why did you not do it that way, and all those types of things. We're just going to break it down and have some fun with it. So come join us.
Boy, that's an interesting one, because I'll tell you, for years, for over a decade, I was one of the top performers, and I was making six figures, did very, very well. And guess what? When you make six figures, you buy nice things. You do things that are a little different. And ultimately, you have this experience of how you put yourself out there as far as what your worth is. Because it's like, well, hey, this is what I make, and this is the presentation that I'm making to the world. Right? And when I shifted over to being an entrepreneur, that steady paycheck was gone.
Right.
And ultimately, so was the amount of money that I was making.
Right.
Right. So that was something that I hadn't even expected. I'm like, well, I mean, I knew that there was going to be no money to start, but I'm like, oh, it'll happen really quickly. And I just remember having that experience where I'm working on writing a book at this point. And one of the things that I'm sharing in that book is that about 8 months or so into it, I needed a win. Like I just needed, and here I am, I'm trying to help people sell, and it's kind of like the cobbler's kids has no shoes.
Right.
I'm sitting there trying to help people sell, and I'm like, I really am looking to be authentic. I know I can help people sell, but I'm struggling myself, right? But I started going around my place, not because I needed the money, quote unquote, because I had set myself up to be able to have the investment to know that this was a long-term play. I just needed a win. So I started going around my place and I started like getting DVDs and things, and I started selling them just because I needed a win. Like I had some second wheels for my car, so I sold those because I'm like, I just needed, that was a good week. That was like a $600 week.
Yeah.
And, it was that moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I really need to get a win.
Yep.
And that is a place where you really find out how committed are you to this. Because it's very easy in those moments to say, well, do I really want to do this? Am I really supposed to be doing this?
Right.
And that was it, so it was really to go through that and then find a break and get another break and just keep moving forward. And that's really it. And a lot of those YouTube inspirational videos, I don't know if you're familiar with Matusis, Mateausz. I know it's Matusis Z. He has a lot of inspirational videos, and I can double check with you before to make sure that we have that right there for the audience if they want to go check out some of those. But he's got some amazing inspirational videos, and those are some of the things that kept me going. Just watching them, like, you're gonna, why do we fall? Well, it's to get back up, and it doesn't matter how many times you get hit. It's about the amount of times you get back up, So all of those things just really kept me going, despite some of the darkest times.
Yeah. It's funny how we all make that same assumption or similar assumptions. In this arena, in the arena as an employee, this is my value, this is my worth. And then we cross that line over to the entrepreneur side. And then we find out how much the marketplace values us really quickly. And
it's not what we like either.
Never. It's like, wow, maybe I was overestimating a little bit. So, but yet you stick it out, you figure it out, and you make the things happen. So I definitely commend you for doing that, because I think there are so many more. I think what we have is an entrepreneur shortage in a very strong way. That's why there's so much opportunity, is because there aren't enough entrepreneurs and enough people willing to learn those things that they shy away from. Like you said, running from the best parts of yourself in order to make those things happen. Now, there was something that we were talking about specifically that I think would help a number of individuals. And I myself am curious, because you mentioned the 5 steps to exponential growth. Now, first of all, anyone would just like to grow. Let's just start. Then there's growth. But then you're saying 5 steps to exponential growth. Growing sales is something that I think every person on the planet who has any desire to have a business of any kind is interested in. I mean, I've got to grow sales. We just call them tenants, right? So I'm curious to hear what these steps are and how we might be able to implement them, as I like to say, at the speed of instruction.
Awesome. Love it. Would love to go through that. Yeah. And what the entrepreneurial piece to it as well is, this is all kind of centered around a team around you as well, because you can only do so much.
Darn it.
And I know, and so as you start to take a look at those things, but you can do so much of your best stuff, and everyone else has their own. One of the conversations you were having is how some people like doing different things, like you're like, there's people out there that like organizing.
Oh God.
Yeah.
God bless them.
But funny enough, I kind of like under my breath, I was like, I'm one of them.
Yeah. Okay.
I do. So that's kind of why you probably hear some of the concepts too. It's like I like organizing all of these ideas into something that's a framework here. So the first thing, it's really that if we want to take a look at that same pinnacle of those three that I was talking about, the purpose, the process, and the profit, well, it follows a very similar model. There's just two more steps essentially. But the first one is really to get clear on those goals and objectives. Clarity is power. And as you have an opportunity to take a look, I'm a big car guy. So if you were to drive around with your navigation system is going to be there with you, and it's going to tell you wherever you're at. But if you don't put an end destination into it, it doesn't know how to help you get there.
Right.
So, the first one is really to get clear on those goals and objectives. And it's understanding what those numbers are. Like, not only just to what would be really helpful by the end of this year or in 3 years, but knowing how is it that you're going to be able to get there. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But the next piece is to get clear on your overall message. Like, what are you saying out there? When someone asks you, what do you do? Or what does your company do? Or how do you do this? Or there's a lot of things. And I learned this personally when I first started. I'm like, well, I do this and I do this and I do this other thing and I do this other thing. And what I would say is there's something that you say and someone connects to it. And it's a matter of just staying consistent with that and making sure that when you're not only so consistent with it, but every single person that you bring on in your team is also as consistent. It's one of the biggest things that I teach is let's get your goals clear so that those goals get filtered down to the team, right? So the team understands it, but then also it's just as important as understanding those goals. You have to understand what is the message that we're consistently saying out there in the marketplace. And I have constantly sales team after sales team where I'll talk with the owner and I'm like, hey, if I were to ask 8 of your reps or 2 of your reps or whatever, who would say what? What would they say about your company? And they're like, well, I don't know. And so ultimately you're looking at there's 8 different people in the same company saying 8 different things. So
maybe even 16 different things.
Or maybe 16 different things. Exactly. Because, they go out there and they'll say one thing one time and then they'll say something else another time. Mm-hmm. But that's really it. So when you get clear on that and you get clear in such a way that it represents your value prop, it connects with your why, it connects with a clear statement about what you do, that's when there's power. That's when there's traction. The next piece is getting clear on your actions. And one of the pieces that I really help people with as well, and this is something that I'd like to offer as a gift to your audience, is I have a daily dashboard tool. Mm-hmm. And what it does is it takes your quarterly goals, breaks them into monthly themes, weekly focus, and daily action. And there's even a video that I help kind of walk people through to help them see what are all of those things that they could do? Because most times we think, and this is the entrepreneurial, we put on our superhero so we could do anything. And we could get it done today as well. And we just came up with the idea and the idea is going to be done tomorrow.
Of course.
Yeah.
Hold on, wait a minute. You're saying it's not like that?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh man.
So being able to say that, boy, I have this bigger product that I want to launch, or I want to do this direction shift, or not even direction shift, but there's this whole new market that I want to go after. Focusing in on that for the quarter and then breaking it down into month by month. So then you're able to say, all that I need to do is research this month, as opposed to having to feel like I have to research it, write it, prospect, sell, and close, and have all of that seamlessly work in a week. That just doesn't happen. So ultimately, it's getting very clear on your actions and being able to look at it every day. Because again, when I talk to so many different business owners, they're like, I've been working all day long and I don't even know what I did.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because they're sitting there saying, I'm working all day and I just want to feel like I'm making progress.
Yep.
And so if you're reactionary, that's just what's going to happen. You're just going to go from everything to everything. And you're going to take a look at your email and you're going to see, oh my gosh, there's 30 emails that just came in, and you'll start reading one and then you'll go over here. I mean, it's just, there's so much reaction going on out there. And what this allows you to do is to take direction. Take direction back over your calendar.
Just so that I'm clear.
Yeah.
You said there was 30 emails?
Oh, well, I'm saying 30 emails in the last hour or two.
Well, okay, why so few?
Oh, I don't know.
I would be happy for 30.
Yeah.
That would be good.
So maybe it's 300 or 3,000.
Well, thank God for filters. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, yeah, and I guess, that's a lot of the things that I've done is just recently was put up all of these different filters in different mailboxes, and that has helped my inbox. So my inbox was crazy, but now it really has scaled back to something that's very, very manageable, which is really interesting. But to your point, there's a lot of emails that come in, and so it's a matter of being able to filter out what are those things and what directions do you need to take. So step 1, just to kind of recap, is get clear on your goals. 2 is get clear on the message. Step 3 is get clear on your actions. Step 4 is to get clear on your market. Who are you really talking to? And we know that the avatar is really the biggest conversation that a lot of people are talking about these days, because you need to get clear on what are their needs, what are their wants, what are they really out to accomplish?
Right.
And knowing that there's multiple markets, I started working with a company at the beginning of the year, and he had about 6 different avatars. And I said, look, we can go after all 6 of them, or we could really get clear on focusing in on 1 or 2 of them and getting really, really narrowed in on what the process is and what the proposal is going to be to them, and get that dialed in. Once we have that first one down, the other 5 really take care of themselves because we're duplicating the process. But let's get really clear on that first most ideal market that's going to benefit you the most. Because again, I tried this at the very beginning. I tried to be everything to everyone. And when you end up being everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to no one. So I encourage people to be something to someone.
Mark, you keep bursting all of my bubbles. I was so excited. now you're telling me I have to constrain myself and follow one course until I'm successful there. Great. That's fine. Keep going. What's next?
Yep. I thought I heard that on your show a time or 2 already. So, right?
Yep.
Good. And then so step 4 is really getting clear on that market. And the best way to do that is to talk to your existing customers. What do they need? What are they looking for? And so what are they doing online? Because there's countless amounts of opportunities for you to invest in online products and platforms. And look, each of them have a purpose and a reason. The question that you need to ask is it for your audience? Is your audience there? Because there's plenty of people out there that offer great tools and strategies to be able to do that. It's just you need to identify, is that really where your audience is? So getting clear on that market. And then number 5,
hold on. Before we go there, I just want to share with people, because again, this has been a documentation process of, as I'm learning, something just happened for us that we didn't know. It was an experiment over the weekend, where what we're doing now is we're doing a recap show of the Shark Tank, because a lot of what we do revolves around raising capital. Shark Tank revolves around raising capital. So 15 minutes after it airs live, we broadcast live and recap the show and talk about what just happened. And I give my thoughts of how you could raise capital with this deal and why this deal was good and that one was bad. Had no idea that our market was sitting there on YouTube looking for this type of information. We've had more views on that one video over this past weekend than we've had on any video ever. And we're just like, oh, well, maybe we need to keep doing this. I'm saying all this to say, there could be times where you think you know where they are, but you don't know. And it's always good to experiment with new opportunities as they come.
Oh, yes. And like you just had alluded to as well, is that when you see something stands out way above, it's then just saying, I'm going to be consistent with this now. Yes. This is the next step. And that's ultimately, as we were alluding to earlier, that fog that you were driving in. I'm not saying that you're driving in a fog right now, but just like the fact that you just have an opportunity to see the next step in front of you. Well, that's kind of where you are with this YouTube, right? It's like you just tried it.
Yep.
You're trying a new way home, and so you're seeing how that's going to really apply.
Yep.
And so the trick there, I mean that's fantastic. I love that, and I've been on and off with watching Shark Tank, but I just recently started watching it again, and I've just been so enjoying that. And Mark Cuban there was someone on the other day, and he said, the gentleman that was talking said, I get up at 6:30 or 7 o'clock and I work all day long. And Mark just said, hang on, stop here, right here. He's like, I just want people at home to realize that this is really entrepreneurship. Like, thank you for bringing this up, because everyone kind of thinks, oh, it's just this easy thing. And, you just show up. And I know we've been busting a lot of those bubbles today.
Right.
But just, the fact that so much the sharks on there all had to go through the same thing. They're sitting there because they just had more stick-to-itiveness than other people that quit early.
Yep. In so many ways. And I love this show too. And now we're helping other people love and understand this show, because it's one thing to see it, it's another to understand it, and more importantly, how you could use it in your real life. And that's the part, because when I'm watching it, there have been times where I've seen a transaction go down on this show, and then I'll go do that or a version of that in my next real estate transaction, and I'm just like, that was pretty cool. So now we're, again, it was the team. And that's the other thing. The idea, it wasn't even my idea. Someone else on the team said, hey, Jay, we should do this. And I'm like, well, you guys have taken a journey on my crazy ideas enough. I guess it's time for me to take one of yours.
And that's great. Love that. Perfect.
So what was let's get sorry, we got off. You got me excited because it just kind of happened. That was kind of real time. What's the fifth piece?
Yeah. So the fifth piece is to really get clear on your metrics and know the criteria. So many people don't know, the cost of acquisition, their lifetime value of the customer, how many prospects they need to talk to in order to get an appointment, from an appointment to get a sale. All of those numbers you should be tracking diligently. And if you're doing something online, being consistent with something, knowing that, all right, this is, I started tracking the amount of time that I'm doing something, I'm spending on one particular aspect. And this is just my own thing. I'm kind of experimenting with different metrics for me to be able to understand. But one thing that I noticed was when I made this shift in this one headline, I had a 50% higher yield, or actually it was 100% higher yield.
Right.
And, it was just a matter of me being able to know that I made this shift on this date, and this is the shift that happened. And Google Analytics are amazing out there, so there's a lot of tools that are out there, but sometimes there's no better tool than just taking a couple tick marks on a blank sheet of paper and tracking it that way to begin.
Yep.
And that's the biggest thing that I really, really encourage, because once you could start to know what your numbers are, then you could start to adjust. Because, I have clients that want to say, oh, I want to increase this by 10,000. I'm like, great. How do we do that? I don't care what the number is. It could be 10,000, it could be 100,000, it could be a million. Whatever the number is irrelevant. It's just as long as we have the math to support it. So once we could get clear on the math to get that happen, to make that happen, then it's just a matter of going out there and executing on that. So that's the fifth piece, and I think that's a piece that's overlooked a lot as a way of kind of, well, I don't need to necessarily look at that number just yet, because if I don't look at the number, it's kind of the ostrich. If I don't look at the number, the problem isn't there.
Oh, it's there. It's there, and it's eating you alive. And you don't even know it. Right. Those are the things. The interesting thing is that every industry has its own version of these metrics, for sure. I know, for us, there's a cost to acquire a tenant, just as there's a cost to acquire an investor, and there's a cost to acquire someone who wants to learn what we do. There's always a cost to it, and you've got to learn how to track it. And I think part of the challenge, Mark, is just learning what it is that I need to know. Like if you're a brand new entrepreneur, you don't know what you're supposed to track. I need to sell something so I can eat. That's what you're thinking at the end of the day. So all of these things can become a little bit overwhelming. So I'm curious, how does one begin if that's where they're starting from so that they can become this expert and proficient at their business?
Great. And it's beginning and sticking with something. I mean, really, I know that that's kind of, I don't want to be overly simplistic, but what I learned from my mistake, I started and I tried 20 million different things, and I was doing 20 million different things. So my focus was distracted. And I heard you say the other day, like, what do you mean you can't build a business on 10% of the effort? And it's not that I wasn't putting in 10% effort. I was putting in 150% effort, but I was putting in 150%. You can't put 150% effort. You could put 100% in.
I understand.
But I was putting in 100% effort across 20 different things. So that was splintering it to 5% of effort across everything. And so when I was doing all of those different things, I couldn't get the right metrics. I couldn't get the right understanding. And there is a point where you do have to practice something and you have to try something, but you have to stick with it long enough to see how you can adjust it so that it can work, so that the more discovery you make around your audience, the more discovery you make around what's really connecting to your crowd, to your potential client, that's where it really makes the difference. So it's just starting with one thing and being that one thing very, very well. Doing that one thing very, very well.
Indeed. So I'm sure at this point, there's a number of people listening going, all right, I get it, Mark. I got a lot of work to do. Sales is definitely part of this process. I don't like that word, but okay. I'm willing. Let's go make this happen. If someone was out there and wanted to find out more about what you're doing, where you're hanging out, and how they can take those next steps, what would you suggest they do?
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm on a lot of different social media as Mark Jamnik, but the best place to reach me, and this is where you could also pick up your free gift, which is that daily dashboard, and it's simply go to markjamnik.com. I'll spell that for the audience, and I know that they'll also be in the show notes, but MarkJam as in Michael, N as in Nicholas, IK.com/offer/cash flow diary. It's a free gift, so please download it, use it, and watch the video that's included in it as well to implement that so that you can look and take those goals and objectives that you have and apply them into your business.
Excellent. So as we wind down, I got to ask you this question. I believe very strongly there's someone right now who is listening, considering putting on their superhero outfit for the first time, probably even shopping for the right cape as we speak, and feeling maybe a little hesitant, possibly a tinge of, can I do this, or will it work, or can I even learn to sell? Oh my God, I got to talk to strangers. Mm-hmm. What would you say to that person right now?
I would say, go back to that moment where you had the idea. Where was it? Were you laying in bed and you woke up and you started journaling, or you started writing about whatever it is that idea was, where you couldn't even sleep? You were so excited to really think about that. Like, I can't believe that I would be able to actually even do this. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this, but I'm just so excited. I'm going to start writing those things down. Go back to that point of origin and see and connect back to what it really was that got you excited to get started, to even think about it, to even put it down on a sheet of paper. And then just think about, well, what is the next step that you could take today that can help you get there? Even if it's a phone call, or even if it's a note that you're going to call someone tomorrow. I mean, it's really just whatever those actions are that you could take that really gets you back connected to, one, why you came up with it, and then two, taking a look at what is that maybe 5 years from now. By you taking that action, taking a look at where you see yourself, whether that's on the beach, while you're on your laptop, or just on the beach enjoying time with your family, but knowing that one step led to another step, which led to another step, which led to 5 years from now you being on the beach with, spending time with your family, and really get clear on what that overall bigger objective and bigger goal is for you. And that's where I would start.
Excellent. Well, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to invest with us here today at the Cashflow Diary.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? It means go sell something, but if you aren't there yet, go over to his website, markjamnik.com/offer/cashflow diary. Why? Because you know you need the assistance. You know it's there. Don't even question, do I, should I? Yes, the answer is absolutely. You listened to this entire episode for one reason. You were looking for information. We found it. You can now go get it, and it costs you nothing but time. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.